We live in a world that applauds swift decisions and celebrates the self-made man. A culture of urgency pushes us to act fast, to rely on instinct, to trust in our own cleverness. But amid the noise and haste, something ancient and essential is often left behind, the habit of asking God first. Not second, not when all else fails, but first. It is a strange thing, isn't it? We believe in an all-wise God, we speak of Him as the source of truth, and yet, when trouble comes or opportunity knocks, we turn first to friends, to the internet, to books, to ourselves. It's as though we say, God, stay near, but only for emergencies. But the soul is not a machine to be repaired when broken. It is a living thing that must be guided daily, moment by moment, by the one who made it. To ask God first is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is not indecision. It is trust. Think for a moment. If God really knows the end from the beginning, if He understands you better than you understand yourself, if His love is more constant than the morning sun, then what sense is there in ignoring Him until you're out of options? Would it not be far more reasonable, even logical, to begin every question with prayer? Asking God first does not mean that every answer will thunder down from the heavens. Often, He whispers. He leads quietly through Scripture, through a stirring in the heart, through closed doors and open windows, through the wise words of others. But His guidance, when sought with a sincere heart, is never absent. It may not always come in the form we expect, but it always comes. To ask God first is to begin a conversation that changes the nature of your decisions. You no longer ask, what do I want most? But what is good, what is true, what is right in your eyes? It is no longer a matter of chasing happiness, but of walking in obedience, knowing that joy follows those who walk with their Maker. Now, the world might say that's too slow, too uncertain, too abstract. But those who have walked with God a while begin to see that His timing, though different from ours, is never wrong. His delays are never aimless. His silence is not absence. To ask Him first is to wait sometimes, but it is never to wait in vain. There is a humility required here, and that is perhaps why we avoid it. For to ask God first is to admit that we do not know enough, that we are not strong enough, that our insight is limited, our judgment clouded. It is to confess our need, but there is no shame in such confession. It is the beginning of all true strength. We must unlearn the reflex to rely on our own wisdom and retrain the soul to reach upward before looking outward. Let the first question in any dilemma be not, what should I do? But, Lord, what would you have me do? This is not superstition. It is not the passive evasion of responsibility. It is the deepest kind of responsibility, to the truth, to the voice that knows the way even through shadow. It is the discipline of those who would rather be faithful than merely successful. Ask God first when you are afraid, and He may not remove the fear, but He will give you the courage to walk through it. Ask Him first when you are lost, and you may not receive a map, but your feet will be directed one step at a time. Ask Him first when you are tempted, and He will show you the door of escape that always exists, though we often miss it when we do not seek His light. There are moments in life when the consequences of a single choice will echo through decades. How vital, then, that such choices not be made in the dark. To ask God first is to light a candle in that darkness. It may not illuminate the whole road, but it will always show the next step. And in the asking, something else happens too. Your heart becomes attuned to the heart of God. You begin to love what He loves, to hate what He hates, to long for the things that truly matter. This is not merely guidance. It is transformation, not just direction. It is relationship. So do not treat prayer as the last tool in the shed. Do not treat God as your fallback plan. Begin with Him. Consult Him as you would a trusted father, a wise king, a faithful friend. Not because you are unsure of yourself, but because you are sure of Him. Ask God first, and you will find that the rest of life has a way of finding its place. Troubles shrink in proportion. Blessings are seen for what they are. And even in uncertainty, there is peace, for the hand that holds the world also holds you. True wisdom begins when we consult God before we consult ourselves or the world. True wisdom begins when we consult God before we consult ourselves or the world. The world teaches us to be quick, to be bold, to rely on instinct, to trust in the knowledge we've accumulated, the experiences we've lived, the advice of those around us, and the resources at our fingertips. But there is a wisdom that transcends intellect, a guidance that cannot be found in books or on screens, or even in the most thoughtful conversations. It is the kind of wisdom that begins not with a question posed to the self, but with a question directed heavenward. It is the discipline of asking God first, not as an afterthought, but as a sacred habit. Before we ask what we think, what others think, what the experts say, we must first ask, what does God say? There's a humility in that posture, an acknowledgement that our insight is limited, our emotions can mislead us, and even our best logic can fail to grasp the full picture. True wisdom knows the limits of human perception and seeks a higher perspective, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the one who sees all things clearly. When we begin with God, we step into alignment with a plan greater than our own, with timing that may test our patience, but will never betray our trust. This is not passive hesitation, but active dependence, a surrender not of responsibility, but of arrogance, of the illusion that we are ever fully in control. To consult God first is to be still before moving, to listen before speaking, to wait before reacting. It slows us down in a world that urges us to rush, but it does not make us fall behind. Rather, it places us exactly where we need to be, at the center of God's will, even if we do not fully understand the outcome or the path ahead. There is a peace that comes when decisions are born from prayer, not pressure. There is a quiet confidence in knowing that the next step, though uncertain to us, has already been considered by the mind of God. We are not asking a distant force for advice. We are approaching a Father who knows our thoughts, our fears, our wounds, and our longings. To ask Him first is not a religious formality. It is a relational necessity. It is the cry of a heart that knows it was never meant to walk this life alone. The wisdom that comes from God is pure, peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits. It is not reactionary. It is not rooted in ego. It does not seek to control or manipulate. When we begin with God, our choices begin to reflect His nature, and our steps begin to reflect His truth. The wisdom we carry is not merely clever, it is holy. It does not just serve our goals, it transforms them. Asking God first changes what we desire. It recalibrates our motives. It reveals the selfishness hiding behind noble intentions, and it softens the pride we disguise as strength. We become aware not only of what is right, but why it is right. We begin to value integrity over convenience, purpose over popularity, calling over comfort. So often, we make decisions driven by anxiety or ambition, and then we ask God to bless them. But true wisdom doesn't work that way. It doesn't begin with action and end with prayer. It begins with prayer and flows into action. Wisdom waits at the feet of God before stepping into the world. It is not found in impulse, and it is not found in stubborn independence. It grows in the soil of surrender, where the voice of God is not one of many, but the first and clearest voice we seek. It is not that others cannot give counsel. Indeed, wisdom listens carefully to wise people. But it is only after the voice of God has shaped the lens through which all other voices are heard. There is something deeply freeing about no longer having to carry the full weight of every choice alone. There is clarity that begins to break through the fog when our hearts are quiet enough to listen. There is grace in every moment when we ask God first, even if the answer is not immediate, even if it comes slowly, through closed doors and changed desires and unexpected interruptions. But these things are not accidents when God is involved. They are answers. They are guidance in disguise. They are God's way of speaking to those who wait for Him. The world may call it foolish to pause and pray when a quick decision is needed, but the wise know better. The wise know that haste often leads to regret, that pressure often clouds judgment, and that no decision made apart from God can ever bear the full fruit of peace. There is a narrow path, and wisdom walks it with care. It does not run ahead. It does not lag behind. It listens, it learns, it leans. It asks God first because it trusts that He knows best, not just in spiritual matters, but in the ordinary, the daily, the small moments that add up to a life. The way we respond to conflict, the way we choose our words, the way we navigate relationships, the way we handle money, pain, opportunity, failure, waiting, all of it becomes sacred when we ask God first. We begin to see that nothing is outside the reach of His wisdom. Every moment is an invitation to involve Him, to walk with Him, to seek not just answers, but His presence in the process. We no longer ask simply, "What should I do?" but "What would bring you honor in this? And how can I reflect your heart here?" That is the turning point. That is where true wisdom begins. Asking God first is not a delay in action. It is the foundation of right action. Asking God first is not a delay in action. It is the foundation of right action. In a culture that idolizes speed and immediacy, waiting even a moment can feel like falling behind. But there is a vast difference between waiting passively and waiting purposefully. And when that waiting is filled with prayer, reflection, and listening to the voice of God, it becomes the most productive and powerful kind of preparation. We are trained to believe that decisive action is the mark of strength, that hesitation reveals uncertainty, but the truth is that many of the greatest mistakes in life are made by those who never stopped to seek divine direction before they moved. Asking God first isn't about postponing decisions. It's about positioning our hearts so that every decision we make is anchored in truth, guided by wisdom, and filled with the peace that surpasses understanding. There is a subtle arrogance in always acting first and praying later. It assumes that we know what we need, what we want, and how to get it. But how often have we pursued what seemed good only to discover it was not right? How many times have we rushed forward only to find ourselves lost in the very place we thought would bring clarity? When we ask God first, we are not slowing ourselves down. We are setting a foundation that time cannot erode. We are inviting the Creator of time itself into our timeline, and in doing so, we move forward with a confidence that does not come from circumstances, but from communion. It is tempting to act based on emotion, especially when the pressure is high or the opportunity feels urgent. But feelings, while real, are not always reliable. Circumstances, while loud, are not always accurate indicators of what is best. That is why we must build our actions on something deeper than impulse and stronger than instinct. We must build on the voice of God, and His voice, though often still and small, brings with it a weight of truth that can cut through noise, silence confusion, and reveal paths we could not see on our own. Asking God first is an act of trust, not passivity. It is a declaration that we believe God is not just aware of our situation. He is intimately involved and invested in the outcome. When we build on this foundation, the actions that follow are not just efficient. They are fruitful. They are not simply quick. They are right. They are not designed for applause but for obedience. And obedience, even when it leads us down a narrow road, always results in something greater than what our hurried plans could have achieved. This way of life requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires the maturity to say, I could act now, but I will wait on the Lord. That kind of restraint is not weakness. It is spiritual strength. It reveals a heart that is not driven by fear of missing out, but filled with the peace of being led. There will always be voices urging you to do something now, fix something now, choose something now. And there will be times when action is required without delay. But even then, the habit of seeking God first doesn't disappear, it becomes sharper. The more we practice asking God before we move, the more attuned we become to hearing Him in every moment, even in the chaos. Sometimes the answer comes as clarity, other times as caution. Sometimes God will prompt immediate action. Other times He will invite you to wait, and in the waiting, shape you for something better than you imagined. But either way, what you do after asking Him will always bear more weight and more purpose than what you would have done without Him. Right action is not just about doing the right thing. It's about doing it at the right time, for the right reason, in the right spirit. Only God sees all those layers. Only He knows how one decision will ripple into the lives of others. Only He can see how your next step fits into the larger story He's writing. That is why asking Him first is essential. You're not just asking for permission, you're asking for perspective. You're not just seeking approval, you're seeking alignment. And when your actions flow from alignment with God, they carry authority. They carry peace. They carry a presence that no human plan can manufacture. There are moments in life when the path forward will seem clear, the decision obvious. But even then, asking God first reminds us that what seems good may not be best, and what seems easy may not be right. It is a spiritual safeguard, a guardrail for the soul. It keeps us from slipping into prideful independence or reactive living. It roots us in truth, no matter how appealing the alternatives may appear. When you build your life on the practice of seeking God before you act, you are not immobilizing yourself. You are securing yourself. You are no longer building on sand, but on the solid rock of divine wisdom. This foundation gives you something the world cannot offer: peace in uncertainty, strength in weakness, clarity in confusion, and courage in waiting. It allows you to move without fear, because you know you are not moving alone. You are stepping with the one who goes before you, who surrounds you, who speaks into your heart with a voice that is steady and sure. You begin to realize that rushing is not a virtue, and that urgency is not always a sign of importance. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is pause and pray. Sometimes the most urgent voice you need to hear is the one that whispers, not shouts. To ask God first is to place your trust not in the outcome, but in the one who holds the outcome. It is to say, I am not my own guide. I was not made to navigate life alone. It is to honor God not just with your words, but with your decisions, your pace, your posture. You're not just believing in Him. You are depending on Him. You are building your actions on a foundation that does not shift with moods or seasons or opinions. You are choosing a life that moves at the speed of wisdom, not at the speed of pressure. You are building on something eternal, and what is built on the eternal cannot be shaken by the temporary. When we ask God first, we exchange self-reliance for divine alignment. When we ask God first, we exchange self-reliance for divine alignment. It is a quiet but radical shift in the way we move through life. We are taught from an early age to depend on ourselves, to make our own way, to stand on our own 2 feet. Independence is praised, self-sufficiency admired, and control idolized. Yet something in us begins to break under the constant pressure of being our own guide. The soul grows weary trying to manage what it was never designed to carry alone. In our desire to be strong, we often shut out the very source of strength. We lean into our abilities and overlook His sovereignty. We make plans, push forward, and ask God to bless what we've already decided. But true spiritual maturity begins when we stop asking God to follow us and start asking where He wants us to go. This is the exchange that takes place when we ask Him first. We lay down our self-made strategies, our calculated blueprints, our instinctual responses, and instead we open our hearts to hear what He has to say. It's not that our thoughts are meaningless, it's that His thoughts are higher. It's not that our desires are always wrong, it's that His will is always right. Divine alignment is not about losing our identity, it's about finding it in its truest form. It's about discovering who we are when we walk in step with the One who designed every fiber of our being, when we live in divine alignment. Our decisions are no longer driven by anxiety, fear, or pride. They are rooted in trust. They emerge from a place of peace that the world cannot manufacture. It is no longer about what seems most logical or what feels most urgent. It is about what is most faithful. Faithfulness to God becomes the lens through which we discern what to say yes to, what to walk away from, and what to wait on. There is a depth of wisdom that comes only through alignment, a clarity that cuts through the fog of our own ambition and leads us toward choices that carry eternal significance. Self-reliance says, I can figure this out. Divine alignment says, God already has it figured out. One depends on limited understanding, the other rests in perfect wisdom. One chases outcomes, the other pursues obedience. When we ask God first, we are not consulting Him as an advisor. We are surrendering to Him as Lord. We are acknowledging that our lives are not our own, and that there is no part of our story too small or too complex for His involvement. We invite Him into our motives, our relationships, our priorities, and our daily rhythms. In doing so, we trade the burden of control for the freedom of trust. This kind of surrender is not easy. It requires intentional unlearning. It demands that we become still in a world that rewards noise and movement. It asks us to slow down when everything around us says to rush. It pushes us to pray when it would be easier to act out of impulse. But every time we choose divine alignment over self-reliance, we experience something the world cannot explain. We begin to see doors open that no one else could have opened. We find strength to endure situations we never thought we could survive. We hear His voice cutting through the confusion, guiding us with grace and assurance. There is a stillness in divine alignment that does not mean inactivity. It means confidence in the right activity. It means that even when we are moving forward, we are not moving ahead of God. We are not forging a path and asking Him to follow us. We are following where He leads. This produces not only peace, but fruitfulness. Our efforts are no longer about striving, but about abiding. We are not trying to make things happen. We are trusting that God is working all things together for our good, even when we cannot see the full picture. When we rely on ourselves, we carry the constant pressure to get it right. Every step becomes a burden, every delay feels like failure, every wrong turn feels like defeat. But when we are aligned with God, there is grace even in the waiting, purpose even in the detours, and redemption even in the moments we don't understand. We stop asking how quickly we can move forward and begin asking how closely we can walk with Him. It is a change in posture, from striving to surrender, from panic to peace, from chasing results to choosing relationship. This alignment begins to shape not only what we do, but who we become. We become people who listen before we speak, who wait before we act, who trust even when it's hard to see. Our confidence is no longer in our ability to predict the outcome, but in God's ability to guide us through every outcome. We begin to make decisions not just for success, but for significance. We become people whose lives are not just busy, but aligned, not just productive, but purposeful. We are no longer carried by every wave of emotion or external pressure. We are anchored in the quiet strength of divine direction, and in that alignment, we find rest. Not the rest that comes from inactivity, but the soul. Deep rest of knowing we are where we are meant to be, doing what we were created to do with the one who holds it all. We begin to experience the joy of obedience, the peace of purpose, and the clarity that comes when the voice of God is not one of many, but the first and final voice we seek. We don't need to see the whole path. We only need to trust the one who sees it all. And so, with every choice, every step, every crossroad, we ask Him first, not because we are weak, but because we are learning that true strength is found not in control, but in surrender, not in independence, but in alignment with the heart.